Welcome to the Lean Solutions Podcast, where we discuss business solutions to help listeners develop and implement action plans for true lean process improvement. I am your host, Patrick Adams. Hello and welcome to the Lean Solutions Podcast. My guest today is Karen Martin, and Karen is a returning guest. She was with us back in season 1 when we talked about her book, Clarity First. Karen spent 3 decades honing her experience in operations design, business performance improvement, and leadership development. She is the president of both TKMG Inc. and TKMG Academy Inc. She's also the author of several award-winning books, including Clarity First, The Outstanding Organization, and Value Stream Mapping. She's worked with organizations such as AT&T, Chevron, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Goodwill, Mayo Clinic, the U.S. Navy, so many more. So she has a wealth of knowledge to share with all of us today. Karen, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Patrick. Thank you.
Absolutely. And it's good to have you back and catch up. Obviously, love the work that you are doing, both as a consultant coach and through your academy and training and developing leaders. So thank you for what you do.
Thank
today,
you.
Today, like I mentioned, you are a returning guest. So we talked specifically around Clarity First, your one of your books. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about strategic deployment, execution, just really kind of pick your brain and get some ideas for some of our listeners around how to lead organizations, maybe dive into some Hoshin.
Yeah.
If that sounds good.
Sounds great. I love Hoshin.
Perfect. So let's just start out with, there's some of our listeners are probably new to this concept or maybe have never heard the term Hoshin Kanri. Can you just give us maybe a general overview of Hoshin, strategic deployment execution, just kind of an introduction to what that is?
Sure, thanks. So it pretty much developed in Japan, but sometimes U.S. ideas seep into Japan and then they take them and run with them and then they re-import them back to the U.S. or we grab them or whatever. But it seems to have more Japanese roots than not, thus the term Hoshin Kanri. And it is a method for aligning an organization toward what really matters, aligning the leadership team around what they believe matters, and then executing based on that type of direction. That's the big picture part of it. Sure. You mentioned strategy deployment. That is another term for it, strategy deployment. And you also hear the term policy deployment, mainly in the manufacturing world, but that's another term for it. We tend to go with strategy deployment because it's English. And but the problem with using strategy deployment, it actually comes with a little bit of baggage. So when you say strategy deployment, most senior leadership teams will say, yes, we have a strategy, and yes, we deploy. And there's a whole lot more to strategy deployment. It's a very structured, methodical method for going about this. So there's a lot more to it than what most organizations do. And it's why organizations often struggle with it to really, have it become the new way of operating. Sure. So alignment, focus, clarity, discipline, and fully engaging all levels of the organization and achieving whatever the strategy is.
Mm. Karen, what do you think is, seems like a basic question, but I think, like you said, there's so much complexity with this. But why do you think it's so important for organizations to have complete alignment? Like, what are some of the downsides of organizations not putting a focus in this area? And in your experience, what are some examples of what happens when organizations don't have that complete alignment?
Yeah, so the Outstanding Organization, which you mentioned, focuses all about chaos reduction. And so chaos is what ensues when you don't have clarity around what really matters, and you don't have alignment across the leadership team about what really matters, and you don't have alignment or even knowledge going down into the organization about what really matters. So that's why it's so methodical and such a proven method to being able to get all those things to line up so that you can get results. That's the whole goal is to get actual results. And so chaos is where you have multiple priorities, shifting priorities. This functional area thinks this is the most important thing to accomplish or problem to solve. And this one thinks it's this. And you have leaders, especially because we are a functional based, current state or most organizations are still functionally based. There are very few that have actually done value stream alignment. And those functions, are operating in a bit of a vacuum. And so what matters to them may not matter upstream, downstream, and it certainly may not matter to the customer. And so it's just critical to break all those functions down and take a very disciplined and focused look at what the current state really is, what's in an organization's way from achieving whatever their strategy is, assuming they have a clear strategy, which is the first place to start. And so it's just a way to, align everyone and get that critical mass of people caring all about the same thing so you can get results.
Right. And what would you say to those people that are listening in that maybe the organization doesn't have a clear strategy, or they haven't established, their long-term vision for the organization? Some would say, true north, haven't established that true north or whatever it may be. I mean, what would be the first few steps in making that happen for an organization?
Well, if an organization doesn't have a very, very skilled strategist on staff who's also extremely objective and an excellent facilitator at bringing leaders with varying perspectives together and getting consensus around that strategy, they need to find someone. And that someone's not me, by the way. We don't do the upfront strategy work, because I really believe that in order to get a very clear strategy, you need someone who really understands the industry that the company is in, what the market constraints are, where the opportunities lie, strategies, things like, I love Roger Martin's work. What's it called? Oh shoot, I forget the name of the title of the book, but it's about picking your sandbox you're going to play in. And that's a great analogy. It's like, we're going to play in this sandbox, not that sandbox. So,
right.
What products are you going to offer? Are you going to vertically integrate or stick with a specialty area? Which markets are you going to go after? Those big decisions that's not our wheelhouse. Our wheelhouse is executing the strategy once it is clear and leaders align on it. So they need to find expertise in order to get that level of clarity at the strategy definition level.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Absolutely. Okay, so now let's just imagine that organizations have identified their strategy, their long-term strategy, whether that's, again, already done or they've found someone to help them through that process. Now it's time to execute. And, this is something that, I go into organizations and I see strategies on the wall and I'm like, oh, that looks like a really, really great strategy. What's behind it? How are you guys actually achieving that? And they're like blank stares. Or I go talk to someone in the organization and I'm like, hey, how does your work align to your long-term strategy? And they're like, what long-term strategy? So I'm guessing that you've had some similar experiences. What would you say are some of the breakdowns that happen? Why do organizations struggle to move from establishing that clear direction to actually executing it?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it is a very, very large problem. So, in my, years in the business world, with many, many hundreds of clients at this point now, and my own, pre-consulting, working for companies, I was fortunate that I had two stellar CEOs for two companies I worked for that were phenomenal at execution and making sure everyone else was phenomenal at execution. I thought every company worked that way until I got out into consulting, and I was like, wow. And so, it starts with having someone understand how strong their execution muscles are in the organization. And if they aren't strong, then working on execution in and of itself, in addition to executing whatever, the plan says that they should be doing. So most organizations, when we walk in, execution isn't their strong skill. And that's what's beautiful about Hoshin planning or strategy deployment is done right. The plan that results from the conversations about and it's usually done on a fiscal year. It doesn't have to be, but it's often done on a fiscal year because it actually should precede budgeting. You should know what you want to work on before you figure out how much capital you need to do it. Mm-hmm. And so, that's a whole nother conversation we could be having about the order in which most organizations operate. But once you get a clear plan, Then there's the management of that plan. And that's where the real teeth come in, and the meat of strategy deployment comes in. Is like you're saying, you can see clear strategy on a wall, but it's not being executed. You can also see an amazing plan that's not executed. So the management of that plan becomes critical. And so, what we do is we suggest that early on, after the plan is created, and we're skipping a lot of steps in the middle there, but let's fast forward to the plan is created and everyone agrees with it, or at least there's consensus around it, which isn't necessarily agreement, but consensus that and commitment that these are the priorities. Then you have to have very regular sessions to review where the organization is on it. And the main thing that you're dealing with there is pushing away all the distractions that come up throughout the year that then rob resources that aren't able to focus on what those line items are on a plan. There's a thing called an X matrix that a lot of people use. It's a one sheet plan with like a clockwise view of all of the things that matter, measurement and priorities and all those things. We don't actually use the X matrix, we linearize it. So ours is, just a line item plan, but it's managing that plan that's critical and keeping everyone aligned. And when something really truly out of left field comes along, like COVID, like 9/11, those big things that really do require a business to pivot, then, you discuss it and you pivot together, rather than, one leader kind of going off plan, going rogue, as I call it, and another leader going off. You have to keep everyone together. So it takes strong leadership to keep everyone focused on the plan.
Yeah, that makes sense. And we can talk a little bit more about that specifically, but you mentioned earlier consensus and commitment. What kind of strategies do you see organizations using, or that you guys would coach organizations through in helping them to get a certain level of commitment to that plan?
Well, I'll tell you a real story about a consultant or consulting engagement, a client that we were working with. And so I knew the CEO from a previous engagement, and she brought me into this engagement, and we were doing strategy deployment for the first time with them, and I was facilitating it. So we had about 8 senior leaders in the room. And when it got down to the final list of what the priorities are going to be in order to help them execute their strategy for the next fiscal year, there was one senior leader that was lobbying hard for a specific project, and everybody else was against him. And so, I, as a facilitator, had to, basically mediate that discussion and get him to finally realize that this is, we're all for one cause here, and you're going to have to wait till the next fiscal year for this, and get him to really understand his colleagues have, I thought, very good reasons for the priorities they were proposing. And he finally said that he committed to it, and said he was all in, and the plan gets finalized. They start rolling out the plan. And I usually stay a little bit involved in the beginning to make sure everyone's, still sticking to the plan and they've got their muscles for the management of the plan and everything. And then I got a call from the CEO about 3 months later saying, we've got a problem. So-and-so has gone rogue. And I just learned that he started working on that project, and he's robbing resources of the other line items. And, I've had a one-on-one with him, and he's pretty resolute. And I said, well, you have to make a choice as a CEO. What do you do with that? And what kind of message do you want to send to the rest of the team? If you can't convince them, I think what you have to do. And sure enough, and he was a longtime employee there. But sure enough, she decided to make that an example of how critical Hoshin is for the organization, and he is no longer there. And so it's really sad when leaders, and I don't know whether he really agreed that during those 2 days that we were doing the final thing, and then he changed his mind, or whether he never really agreed. I don't know what was going on in his mind, but that's not playing fair with your colleagues and with the organization. It's a bit, it's going rogue. And so that's the kind of thing where, the management of the plan becomes critical. And, there's a lot of strong leaders out there that I've seen very successful with Hoshin types of, if not directly Hoshin Kanri, but things that are very structured like it, like Alan Mulally at Ford, Larry Culp at Danaher and now GE, they are just masters at keeping people, sticking to a plan unless something really, truly emergency comes out of left field.
Sure. What kind of, how are they communicating that plan throughout the organization? Like, what is how do they keep that plan at the forefront of everyone's minds throughout the entire year? Let's say that they're working on on an annual plan of some sort.
Well, I don't know how Larry and Alan's retired now, but how they did it. But I know what our clients do. And there's, first of all, catch-ball is a really critical part of developing the plan. And so catch-ball is, the metaphor is you're tossing a ball and catching the ball and tossing it back and forth. That's exactly what it is, only it's conversation. And so done well, you do catch ball all the way through to the bottom, to the front lines. So you start at the top and play catch ball back and forth with the, couple levels of leadership and get consensus around priorities. And then you have another conversation. So it's not the old style of cascading goals. Here's the goal. You tell me what you're going to do to support this. That's what I grew up with. That's not what Hoshin is. This is, here's what we think the priorities are. What do you think the priorities are? And it's listening to what other people believe all the way down the front lines who are closest to the customer. And if you're not changing the plan at all, the priorities before you finalize the plan, all the way up and down that catch ball, something's wrong. Because someone will have a better idea because they're closer to a problem or the customer or something like that. And if the plan never changes from the first draft to the final draft, they're probably not really playing catch ball, or they're playing catch ball and not really listening.
Right. That makes sense. And when as it does cascade down through the organization, I'm guessing that once the plan is set and that as you're executing the plan, that some individuals, departments, areas of the organization are going to have conflicting priorities as things come up. What's your recommendation on how to deal with that when, you've been given this clear plan, clear priorities, and then all of a sudden something, falls into your lap that you didn't expect, or, and I'm not talking like COVID, for example. I'm talking like the customer calls, or there's a customer complaint, or so-and-so, from another department needs resources, or whatever it may be, this fire that pops up. Any recommendations on how to, continue executing, but also have to manage the day-to-day, the real stuff that drops in on a regular basis?
Yeah. So the first thing is recognizing what's truly urgent and what's not. A lot of times you have to break a lot of organizational ADD habits, organizational attention deficit disorder, where it's like shiny new objects, we got to do this, we got to do that, we got to do this. And it's like, little moths flitting around. And so part of it is, saying that there's a valid reason to say not yet. And not just do more, because you won't ever execute the plan if you do that. Now, when you're managing the plan, we recommend that people start out with every 2 weeks, and they may be able to get to once a month. Most organizations, their first year can never get to once a month because it's too long between the sessions. And part of the standing agenda is what's new, what's entered our orbit, incoming, what is now entering our orbit that we have to make a decision about. And the cross-functional leadership team makes that decision together, again, with consensus. And either they have to unplug something. You can't just keep piling on. That's what most organizations do. You have to unplug something temporarily to find the resources to put in this truly urgent situation, which most aren't, this truly urgent situation, and then plug back in, and it's a little difficult to swallow that, because that's introducing stop-start, when you unplug and then plug back in. But, there are finite resources in an organization. And, if something is truly that urgent, then you often would have to do that. But the key is having a very, very tough look and high bar for what gets approved to be added into the plan once the plan is finalized.
Sure. Now, and what about when breakdowns do happen? Like you gave the example of the executive who went rogue. I'm sure there's other breakdowns that happen where things pop in, stuff happens, and the plan gets lost, and you show up for your every 2-week meeting, and you're like, this happened and this is no longer a priority, or I don't know, whatever the breakdown is. Any examples in your experience when that has happened, and what are organizations doing, or what are you suggesting they do to respond to that? And you did mention also the plan sometimes does have to change.
Yes.
So, again, just any examples around some of that?
Yeah, so what really helps is upfront that catch ball and getting all that commitment up front, because the people are less likely to look at all the other things coming in when it's so clear that this is the plan. And then when the plan is being managed, it's not just the leadership team getting together, it's people talking about it all the time. So I'm going to take a little sidestep to tiered huddles. If you have an organization that has strong tiered huddles, that plan is center to all of the discussions that they're having about their own priorities at a departmental level or a work team level. And so, and managers, middle managers, supervisors have to become as skilled as senior leaders are of challenging whether something can and should rob resources and move you off with the plan that whatever part they're working on, if it's that, are urgent to do it. So you're changing a lot of mindsets and a lot of behaviors with Hoshin. People think it's just like, you make a list and you check off the boxes. No. You're changing sometimes decades and decades of organizational behavior in order to become a really strong execution-minded organization and get the results that come along with that. So, there's all things you can do. I mean, it's really conversations upon conversations upon conversations and reminding people. I remember my one CEO in the beginning, and this is before Hoshin was written about or anything like that. He may have known about it because it existed from, I think, the 50s. But he carried a card in his suit jacket. Back then, everyone wore suit jackets. And he would come around and take it out and talk about the plan to people and remind them what was important. And, people follow leaders, and they follow whatever leaders do. And so if a leader is resolute and focused, everyone else is going to be resolute and focused. And so that's, it's no pressure, senior leaders. But
it really comes down to you.
It all comes down to you. It really does.
Yeah.
So.
For sure. What is your thought on tying some of these goals and action items to personal objectives, or that is it important to have this type of stuff tied to someone's objectives, and then obviously whether or not they meet those is how they get a raise at that organization or wherever it may be. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I'm going to take a step back and answer a different question first, because it ties directly to this. So that would be, where do you start in the organization? That, I think that's a reasonable question for any organization to ask themselves. If the organization has commitment at the top, that's ideal, and the Hoshin plan starts up there and it cascades down. Then, each division or business unit can have their own Hoshin plan, which is indeed in support of the larger plan, but it's not the old cascading way. It was developed in concert through catchball. So it's a much better connected cascading of the work effort that has to go on to support the higher level goals. So once you get all of that in place, then you can break it even into work team level, and they can have their, priorities. When it comes to personal performance, I have more misgivings than feeling good about performance reviews and raises being directly tied to specific results on specific projects. Mm-hmm. I'm much more interested in how someone collectively is approaching work, working with colleagues and other cross-functional people, and whether they're thinking holistically and thinking through problems from a work system perspective, and how fun they are to work with, frankly, and just, work's not all a bunch of, giggles and and popcorn, but, if someone's just awful to work with. No one's going to want to work with that person. So to me, rewards come more about work values and behaviors that are more general than it does specific results. But I'm sure many people that are listening to the podcast will say, no, you got it all wrong, Karen Martin. And maybe I do.
Well, there's that's why I asked the question, because there are conflicting views on that. And I think it's a great topic of discussion and consideration on, when we think about how do we make sure that the plan is actually executed, and how do we sustain this going forward and make sure that, that the plan is carried out. And not just that, but, year over year, that we've developed a system, something that is going to move the organization closer to their true north objectives, or to, closer to that, whatever they've established as their long-term vision for the organization. And you talked about leadership commitment, so there's lots of other strategies that maybe can be utilized to help sustain this. But anything specifically that you would say, you mentioned systems, maybe we talk about systems specifically. How do we make this a system? And how do we ensure that this is sustainable going forward, that it actually is making an impact for the organization for the long term?
Well, again, I think it comes back to leadership. So no matter what level a leader is at, it's their job to support what they agreed to. And part of that support isn't just delegating it to teams and walking away. Leaders need to manage the work. And when you manage the work, the need to manage people so intensely kind of starts melting away, because it's about getting work done. It's about getting results. And it's also about developing people so they become the best versions of themselves so they can get you results. It's a two-way road. And so I think the things I see happening that are the more problematic once you get to middle management and lower with the Hoshin plan is that they do over delegate. And they never look to see if the person is actually, meeting the deadlines of a project plan. Because remember, this is macro to micro. So there can be projects that are needed to be done, and problems that need to be solved at a micro level that need their own planning document and their own owner and their own, cross-functional team executing them. And so it's a leader's job to make sure that all that work that's in support of the bigger plan is being done, and it's being done well. And if people aren't meeting their deadlines, they need to be talking with those people to find out what's in their way and what can they do together to remove those obstacles.
That's right.
And it may be that someone has told people that they need to start shifting to a different priority, and it's that leader's job to say, no, who told you that? And then go talk to that person and say, no, we have to stick to the plan. We made a commitment to the CEO or the GM or whoever it might be. And so it's that management of the work is what really gives it. It's like the oiling in the machine. It's important.
Yeah, and we say inspect what you expect, and if you've laid out some level of expectations, then, and you talked about tier meetings, leaders need to be involved in that, at every level of the organization, and be committed to, like you said, being available to help remove roadblocks, to help provide resources where resources are needed. That's such a key part of ensuring that the plan is actually carried out and executed properly.
Yeah, I think this is a great time to bring up something that just is such a problem globally, but especially in the West, and it's how many direct reports any one person has. And, Toyota, it does it by design that in most parts of the organization, no one has more than 6 direct reports. And I personally have found throughout my career, and now in the position I'm in with 2 companies I'm running, I start crumbling at 4. And when I say crumbling, I mean not being available to my people the way I need to be to keep developing them and growing them and helping them feel really good about the work and not have them be stalled and things like that. Like 6 is the max, that anyone can reasonably handle if you're really engaged with those people and helping remove obstacles to their success and getting work done. And again, it's about results. Right. And so, these people that I just heard something the other day and I just was like, no, it can't be 30 direct reports. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, how do you even talk to your people? Like,
Right.
you can't have one-on-ones with 30 people.
Right.
And so, organizations, and I think, the people sometimes think, well, if you're going to do that, everyone has 6 direct reports, it's going to be so hierarchical. No, it doesn't need to be hierarchical. That's mental. It's just a matter of what you need to do in order to develop people and keep them engaged. And that's what is the glue with keeping a plan on task, also on track.
Sure. Yeah. And I'm guessing that there's a large number of listeners that are listening to this right now, and they probably have 10 to 20 direct reports. What would be your recommendation to somebody that, maybe they're in a leadership position with, again, 20 direct reports, but how do you change something like that? If they're not the executive director, if they're not the CEO of the company, what would you suggest that they should do in that situation?
Well, someone pretty high up has to be the person to say, this is crazy. We have to change this. And then the minute people start with we can't, they have to be, how could we? We're innovative beings, and there's many ways. And so it's just really looking at the gap. It's a problem to be solved. It's a gap to be closed. The gap is people have 20 direct reports. We need to get them down to 6. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What is it going to take to make that happen? And, HR needs to be involved. But again, I do think it has to start at the leadership level. And, remember that if you have a command and control leadership team at the top, they're going to be very used to having an army beneath people that people tell what to do. And
Mm-hmm.
so the need for 6 direct reports isn't anywhere near as important in that person's mind, because they're not spending the time developing people and removing obstacles and creating the, humane, wonderfully fulfilling and work environment that happens when you do it the way Toyota does it. And so, that's, it's a losing battle if the person at the very top is like, no, I don't want to operate that way.
Yeah. That's so
And
true.
there are plenty of people at the top that don't want to operate that way.
That's very true. Yeah, and there's been many examples, like you said, you mentioned Toyota, but there's many other examples of organizations that are doing it that can show the proof of, the benefits that come with, a smaller group of direct reports for a leader. I would say probably the majority of companies that I work with, somewhere in the company, there's 10 to 15 to 20 direct reports to one leader, and it's just not manageable.
It's not sustainable. It's not manageable. I agree. It is just not. And, when you talk to those people that have that many direct reports and start asking them questions about how well they know how that person's actually even doing, they can't even do performance reviews because they don't really know how the people are performing. And so it's just so silly with the things that we do to make life more difficult than it needs to be, and less fulfilling for sure.
Right. Yeah. And so circling back, obviously, having 6 direct reports, the culture is different. The understanding of how to problem solve, how to, understanding as a leader what your roadblocks are and what resources are needed is a lot easier to see and understand. But circling back to Hoshin, being able to execute the plan, with a smaller group like that, being able to really have some open conversations and, play some catch ball and really determine what is the right plan that is in alignment with our organizational goals, and then be able to have, constant conversations around getting there is much easier.
Yeah. And one more thing about the catch ball is, so I talked about kind of in the beginning to create the plan, but catch ball is needed all throughout the year. And actually, I think catch ball is good for anything, problem solving, meetings, it's really a respectful way to test an idea and to hear what other people's perspectives are, and then adjust based on, listening carefully to those perspectives, and maybe doing some validation to make sure that their perspective is reality and those types of things. But the catch ball, the Hoshin plan is executed far more effectively, or strategy deployment plan, if there's there's catchball going on during plan execution. So for example, if someone's a middle manager and their team's like, we've got this situation we've got to deal with, then that middle manager has to say, I do think this is pretty urgent, or maybe they talk them off the ledge and say that we can wait on this, But if it is really urgent, then that needs to go back up the chain to the people that are meeting on the regular basis about the plan to say, Houston, we've got a problem. We really need to address this, and the resources are already committed. What are we going to do about it? And it's a conversation and consensus.
Exactly. Yeah. And just going back to one of the topics or one of the pieces of this that you talked about earlier, the timeline for starting the plan, and how you talked about having everything done and complete before budgets are complete.
Ideally,
yes. What does that timeline look like? Like, when should they start, and then how does that cascade through, and when should, from the top all the way through to the frontline employees being involved in some of that catchball? I mean, what does that timeline look like?
Yeah, so for the first year, if it's a middle, if it's a large organization, we have to just admit that the first year is not going to have catchball all the way to the front lines. In fact, we figure only one level the first year for a very, very large organization, because there's just too many, thousands of people or tens of thousands of people, to get into this whole thing. It may take 4 or 5 years to get catchball working efficiently enough that you can go all the way to the front lines. But let's say you're a mid-sized company with 2,000-3,000 employees or something like that. I would say first year start July 1st. So it's the 19th. So get going.
Yes.
I don't know what date this podcast is going to be broadcast. It's time to chop. And it's because we didn't talk about the one step before you even start. Once the strategy is clear, and you know where you want to go, and you have the true north metrics identified. So that's all part of that strategy setting. The next thing that I strongly recommend for new organizations is what I call extra effort inventory. And so it's a step where you take a step back and you look at all the extra effort that's not part of daily operations of giving value to customers that is currently going on or is in queue in an organization, or has been started and stopped and is stalled for some reason. And it takes sometimes several months to get the level of clarity on everything that's going on in the organization above delivering value to customers on a daily basis. That is a very sobering step for most organizations. And the point of making them do it, and all leadership teams will complain about it in the beginning, and they all love it when they get there, even though they're really depressed, is because you have to prove to them that you can't just put a plan together and expect it to get executed when your resources are already fully committed.
Sure.
And so you have to unplug some things, and you have to delay the start of some projects and some problems to be solved for the higher priority ones that you get clarity on when you're creating the plan and getting clear about strategy. And so there's a whole vetting process of categorizing things into the now, yes, we have to continue this. This is high priority. Not yet, it can wait till next year. Or no, why were we doing this? That type of thing. And so that whole thing can take 2 months. It can get done in a month in a small company, but most mid-size, it takes two months. And I've seen it go as long as 3 months to get that done. Then you can start putting the plan together. Sure. Because then you have your metrics, you have your strategy, you know what the noise in the organizational noise already is. And then you're considering all of that current noise with the new discoveries that, and it is sobering. I mean, most leaders at some point in the process early on will be like, there's not enough hours in the day. We don't have enough people. And I'm like, yeah, but we have to stop doing some things. That's what this is about. And so it's hard, but it's fun and it's liberating. When they get through it, it's very liberating because everyone knows what's going on and why. They know why that project or that problem is the most important one to solve this fiscal year.
Yes.
Lovely.
Powerful, for sure. And I think a lot of this cannot be done successfully without a certain level of education and training. And I know that TKMG Academy offers a lot of really amazing training and development opportunities. Let's just talk about that a little bit. TKMG Academy. I mean, what was your What was your thought behind all that? Why did you launch the Academy?
It's funny. People asked for it for a long time before I did it because it just sounded like a lot of work. It is a lot of work. And it was mainly people from different corners of the globe saying, we don't have access to workshops and conferences the way you guys do. And yes, we have some books, but they're not always in our native language and, things like that. So it was just a big ask coming in. And at the same time, I wanted to be able to spread the learning more quickly to more people. And, we're a small firm and there's only, so many people to get out there. And so I really wanted to kind of codify a lot of what we do as consultants on site with clients and give them a fighting chance to be able to do it themselves without necessarily having a consulting group in doing it. So that's what formed it. We have 21 courses now. The way we decided to do it, it's meant for the busy professional on the go. They're 1 to 2 hours max. Only a few of them are 2 hours. We aim for an hour. They're packed with content, but it's not convoluted content. We spend 3 months developing it and getting it into a proper sequence with proper supporting documents that people can download. And we have micro learning modules that are little 5 to 10 minute pieces. So people don't have to sit for a full hour if they don't have an hour. It's more likely that people will learn if they are given things in smaller chunks. And so we spend a lot of time with it. We put a lot of quality into the graphics and we record in a professional studio with sound guys and all that stuff, so that it's as few distractions as possible for a learner, so they can learn. And I have a master's in adult learning. A lot of people don't know that. In addition to all my operations stuff. And so I get pretty anal about the quality of the experience the learner has so that they get more sticky, the content can stick and they can retain it more easily.
Love it. And obviously those are available on your website. So if people want to go there, they can find the Academy there.
Yes, it's TKMGacademy.com. TKMG is the new name for what used to be the Karen Martin Group. And now we're like a real company and I'm not the only one. so TKMGacademy.com, and then TKMG.com is the consulting arm that we've had for 30 years.
Love it. So I will make sure that we drop those links into the show notes. So if anyone's interested to reach out and connect with you, they can do that right in the show notes and also connect to all your amazing courses through the Academy there. Is there any other way, LinkedIn or any other way that people can reach out to you if they're interested with questions?
Yeah, LinkedIn, we have both companies have a LinkedIn page, and then I have a personal page. Mine is Karen Martin OpEx for operational excellence. So Karen Martin OpEx is the personal one, and then TKMG-Academy and TKMG, I think just TKMG on the other one. And so yeah, we're all over LinkedIn, so it's good.
Okay, and also your books, they're on your website. Also, I'm assuming on Amazon.
Yes, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all the major booksellers. We have a book page on our Academy site also, but when you click buy book, you go to Amazon basically. So it's just to get people to be able to buy whatever they want. We have one book on the site. Okay,
got it. Well, perfect. It's been great to have you back on the show, Karen. It's great to connect again with you. We were able to meet in person in Texas at the AME in Dallas not that long ago. So it was great to hear a little bit more about TKMG Academy and the work that you're doing there. And so obviously now being able to do a deep dive there, it's just fun to see all the stuff that's happening, and just really appreciate the work that you're doing to help develop the lean community. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Are you going to be there this year in Cleveland?
I am going to be there.
Yeah. I'm giving a workshop this year, value stream mapping. I gave a half day last year. This year it's going to be a full day, so we can go a little deeper into value stream mapping, and then we'll be there exhibiting all week also. So we'll get to see you.
Perfect. We'll see you there.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Karen.
And great questions. Hoshin's so important. I hope strategy deployment, whatever you want to call it, I hope people will really look into it. And we have a course on that. I feel like we got an app for that. We got a course on that.
All right. Well, thanks again, Karen.
See ya. Thank you for having me. Have a good day.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Lean Solutions Podcast. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to subscribe. This way you'll get updates as new episodes become available. If you feel so inclined, please give us a review. Thank you so much.